Mrs. Lamb from Corporal Landing Middle School.
And hi, it's Ms. Berger from Larkspur Middle School. Today we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing integers.
And we are going to multiply and divide integers, our I can statement. I can multiply and divide integers using mathematical rules. But as always, we're going to give you tips and tricks to remember those rules.
Because you got to memorize those rules, so we'll show you easy ways how.
So on this page, we're trying to decide how to actually do it. And I thought, well, you know, the best thing is let's give them some answers. So instead of starting with the questions, let's give you some answers and see if we can kind of discuss and figure out the rules. On this page, we are always going to be working with one negative number and one positive number.
And try to figure out what our answer should be. So if I have a negative 4 times a positive 6, my answer is negative 24.
So over here, I've taken my negative 24, I divided it by 6, and I got an answer of a negative 4.
Well, wait a minute, I have a positive 8 times a negative 4, and my answer is negative 32.
But I changed this one up a little. I started with a positive 32, but I divided it by the negative 4, and look, I got a negative 8.
So you're telling me that if I have a positive times a negative, my answer will be negative?
Yes. A negative divided by a positive will also give you a negative answer. In other words, if one is positive and one is negative, whether you're dividing or
multiplying,
your answer will always be a negative number.
Oh, so that's pretty easy. I just kind of do the math and then I figure out if my answer is positive or negative.
Well, it's kind of like this. Negativity kind of sometimes rules. Like, negativity kind of brings things down.
That's true.
So when you have one negative and one positive, you've just got, you kind of have that negative event.
And one bad grape spoils the bunch.
Yeah, that drama. Well, what happens when both negative numbers are negative? Like it's a negative negative.
I don't know. What happens with a negative? Well, what happens in English when you have a double negative?
They become,
don't they become
positive?
Positive, right? So if I'm not going to a party, I'm going to that party.
So a negative negative, a double negative is a positive.
In English.
Whoa.
And in math. So if I have a negative 4 times a negative 6, I have a positive 24.
And if I take that negative 24 divided by a negative 6, I get the positive 4. So I have two negatives here, positive answer.
So like let's skip. So my negative 5 times negative 9, I get positive 45.
Change it around, start with a negative 45, divided by a negative 9, I got a positive 5.
That's crazy. So two negatives make a positive?
Yes.
And two positives we know are positive because we passed elementary school.
Exactly. Like 3 years ago.
Like 3 years ago.
Okay.
All right, so let's think of some tips and tricks to help us remember these rules. I like to use something called the tic-tac-toe board. So if you take a tic-tac-toe board, right, we all know how to do this, and you just take one diagonal and you make it positive.
You mean you already won?
And everything, I've always been a winner.
Yes.
Everything else is negative, right? Mm-hmm. So then here's how you read it. And you can read it left, right, diagonally, it doesn't matter. So if my first integer is negative and my second integer is negative, my answer is positive, right? But if my first integer is negative and my second integer is positive, then my answer is negative.
Because the negativity ruled, you had
and a positive times a negative is a negative. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. And a negative divided by a negative is positive. So you can read it up, down, left, right, or diagonally.
Literally in every direction.
Literally, all the direction.
So I have another strategy, and I'm going to ask you to change colors to red. And I'm going to make a face, and this little guy is kind of sleeping. Can you give me another color? Perfect. So this is a little face. It's kind of like a sleeping guy. So what you do, I don't know. So what you do is you look at, if you have a negative times a positive, cover with your hand those two, your answer ends up being negative. Oh, wow, I kind of did that. If you have two negative numbers, cover that up with your hand. Your answer is going to be Positive.
That's crazy.
Yeah, with all those little dots on there.
It's okay.
So sometimes my students on their checkups or things, when they just want to do it really, really quick and they only have like maybe one question, they just draw that face. And then what they do is if they have a positive, negative, they just go like this, and they know their answer is going to be a negative answer. And this only works with multiplying and dividing.
Don't
Okay?
try to do it
No.
with addition and
No,
subtraction.
don't do it. Don't
We
do
already
it.
taught you those rules.
No, don't do it.
All right, so let's move on to an example. I'll do one example, and I'm gonna multiply. Ooh, called it dibs.
She picked the easy one.
Woo!
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna take negative 50, crazy, times negative 3, right? So remember, if a number is outside of those parentheses, that means multiplication. I could also write this negative 50 with the dot times 3, or negative 50 with a little star times 3, negative 3. So all of those mean the same thing. But if you see a number outside the parentheses, you're multiplying. So step 1, ignore the signs, just do the math. 50 times 3, well, 50, 100, 150. So 150. And then now I look at my signs. A negative and a negative make a positive. I could check that with my strategy. Okay, I have a negative and a negative, so my answer is positive.
Very nice. Now I'm going to go in and do some division, and I'm going to write it three different ways actually as well.
Crazy.
I'm going to do 32 divided by negative 4. I'm going to put that in parentheses. I could also write it as 32 divided by negative 4.
Okay.
Or I could write it as 32 divided by negative 4.
So crazy.
We have 3 different ways to write the exact same problem, but I've got a positive and a negative. I've got a positive here, so I'm going to cross out the positive, and I'm crossing out the negative, so my answer is going to be a negative. 32 divided by 4 is 8.
Woo.
It's a negative 8.
Woo!
Negative 8. Negative 8.
It's so simple. Just do the math and then use a strategy to figure out what your sign should be. Yeah, man, we're the best teachers
That was
ever.
easy. I need my easy button here. Remind me to bring my easy button.
We will.
All right.
All right, so what do you do next? If you're a little confused or you want to hear a little bit more about multiplying and dividing integers, watch the next video. But if you feel good to go, start your practice. Bye.
Bye.